Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 6, Episode 25, The Sound of Her Voice. This episode aired June 10th, 1998. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's debacle, Time's Orphan?
It was short. I can definitely say that.
The podcast?
Not something that was really memorable.
Not one of the best. Not memorable for sure. I feel like we have, since we recorded a week ago, we have even grown to dislike it more. Like the more we've talked about it, we're like, oh yeah, that was annoying.
Why were there no emotions in that episode?
I don't know. I cried in this episode, and we didn't even know the person.
Right, and she was effectively a voice actor.
Yeah, we never even saw her. Well, speaking of this episode, you have the notes this week, so ready when you are.
Okay, let's get underway. We open in the bar, and Odo is harassing Quark over his furniture, specifically the bar stools and the Darbo table not being up to building codes. And I'm fairly sure Odo trades favors with the enforcement officer just so he can annoy Quark. Or alternatively, maybe the problem is Quark consistently bribes the building inspectors. So you have to have Odo do it.
That might be it. This was very Season 1 Odo. We haven't seen this level of scrutiny at Quark's for a while from Odo.
Well, Odo is being very officious, and Kira enters, asking if he wants to join her for lunch. And he literally stops mid-sentence, and his whole tone and mood change, and he leaves with her.
And his face, everything changed. It was super cute. He's like, Nerys!
Yes.
It was great.
Well, Quark picks up that Odo and Kira are in love, and Odo is distracted. He tells Jake, a distracted policeman is an opportunity. I like how Morn appears in this episode pretty much immediately.
Barely moves.
Do you think what Odo's doing here is a little bit of an act towards Quark? Because if this is important work, it's the way, as soon as Kira arrives, it all disappears. I feel this was more of a Odo keeping Quark on his toes, letting him know
maybe.
that I've got my eye on you. I'm keeping an eye on things.
I do think that's more what it was.
Yeah. We now go to Cisco recording a log that the Defiant has finished a convoy escort run. And also that Kasidy was the Starfleet liaison for the convoy, as she knew most of the captains. She's complaining to Cisco that she didn't know it would involve writing 20 log entries a day for Starfleet, which I laughed at because this harkens back to Odo complaining about how many logs he had to write for Starfleet.
Yeah.
I think that was necessary evil, way back in Season 2.
Yeah, it's just like the amount of PowerPoint presentations you end up creating in certain jobs, and you just think, how did I get here? How did I get to this job?
What did I do wrong?
What did I do wrong with my life?
Well, during this conversation, Cisco seems very distracted. Julian briefly stops by, and he isn't very talkative. Kasidy comments that there was a time when you couldn't shut him up. And Cisco replies, I think I like him better this way.
Me too. Yeah, and then Kasidy says, that's mean, which makes Cisco sort of change his tone. I don't know, everyone is really cranky in this scene. It's strange. And I don't think it was mean, what he said. It was more sarcastic and childish. And also, she has no idea how irritating Julian has been. I also prefer him quieter.
Something I've noticed about Julian, that they've kind of backed off on. You know how when we found out he was an augment, all of a sudden he had these amazing math skills and could outpace Dax and the computer? And it was almost Spock-like. Did they sort of forget about this? Because he really seems to have not shown this ability since.
No, we haven't seen it since he was on the Jem'Hadar ship with Garrick, I think.
Yeah.
I do feel like one of the things they do on this show is they want you to know that everybody in the crew is feeling a certain way.
Yeah.
And they'll have everybody look frazzled, right? There was that one episode where it started and everybody's hair was messy. So everybody was the same. And so I feel like they're trying to do that here, where everybody is a little bit frazzled or they're tired from the war.
Yeah.
And that's a theme kind of throughout this episode. So I don't think they forgot that Julian was an augment. I think instead they're trying to do this thing where everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah. Gotcha. Worf calls Cisco to the bridge as they picked up a distress call coming from somewhere in the Rotharian system. Miles plays the message and we hear it's a Starfleet officer stranded on an L-class planet without an environmental suit, a damaged escape pod, and a barely breathable atmosphere. She finishes saying that anyone who can help her will be her personal heroes. Worf informs Sisko it will take 6 days to reach her, and there are no other ships nearby. Sisko then orders Worf to turn the ship around and Miles to establish two-way comms, and to tell her that her heroes are on the way, and into the opening credits.
That was kind of a funny line. Maybe he was compensating for feeling crappy in the last scene, like he's trying to convince himself he's a hero doing a hero's job or something.
Well, yeah, during this whole opening, Sisko just seems a little off.
Yeah.
Avery, having played this character for so long, you immediately know when he modifies the character a little bit, plays it a little differently, you know straight away something is off.
No, he's definitely unsettled.
Yeah.
It would be weird to all of a sudden have your girlfriend on board. That would be strange.
Yeah.
Though I'm not sure I buy he would turn into a child, which I think happens later. But anyway.
We go back to Sisko, who is recording another log, and we learn the stranded officer is called Lisa. Mars is working on a way to get two-way comms going and listening to her transmission. He tells Julian she reminds him of his cousin, and he's just playing her broadcast out loud.
Yeah, and that broadcast seems to be irritating Julian, but Miles says he thinks it's respectful that somebody is listening to this recording that she's making.
Yeah. Back to the bar, and Odo is inspecting the upgrades to the bar stools, which basically seems to involve just putting a back on them. Quark now starts spinning a whole tale about how Odo should be celebrating the 1-month anniversary of his first date with Kira. It seems to work, as after leaving the bar, Odo stops at a stall on the promenade and begins examining some curios.
Looking at the tables at the flea market.
Yes. I knew you were going to say that.
Really? I didn't even know I was going to say that till just now.
I suspected.
Okay.
Jake, who's been hanging around in the bar since the start of the episode, asks Quark, "Okay, what are you up to?" And he explains how he's working on a crime novel and he needs realistic, nefarious characters. He asks Quark if he can watch him pull off whatever it is he's up to. Quark protests, saying he's not nefarious, he's a businessman. But he agrees to provide Jake help, providing nothing finds its way back to Jake's dad. He could have asked Miles. I mean, Miles was actually part of a crime syndicate for a while.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And he got a cat out of it.
I like how in this episode, it's not the least bit suspicious that Jake is following Quark everywhere.
And typing on the pad constantly.
Yes.
On the Defiant, Kasidy comes to talk to Miles, and he's still working on the comms. In the background, we can hear Lisa transmitting still. Kasidy asks him if he finds it awkward having a civilian on board. Miles says, no, doesn't bother him. As they're talking, he gets two-way comms working, and Lisa says, "Whoever you are, I love you." Everyone is happy and smiling, and upbeat music plays as we go into the ad break. Will this last?
Definitely not.
Sisko is now talking to the stranded officer who is called Lisa Cusak. We learn she was the commanding officer of the Olympia. It was on a long-range exploration mission to the Beta Quadrant. Her ship was destroyed after they scanned an energy barrier around the planet, which caused their engines to fail.
Man, Starfleet has got to figure out how dangerous planets are that have energy barriers around them.
Yeah, you stay a long way away and you send a probe in.
Yeah.
As it's an L-class planet, she's having to take triox to counter the elevated CO2 levels in the atmosphere, but she has a limited supply. Bashir tells her to reduce the dosage and stretch it out for as long as possible. Kasidy asks if there's anything she can do, and Lisa asks for them to talk to her. The medication is keeping her awake, and she needs someone to talk to. Sisko agrees, saying he'll have someone on the comms to her at all times.
I was disappointed Kasidy never talked to her, or at least they never showed it.
We cut to Sisko telling her about the state of the war and obviously going into great depth. Lisa tells him that's enough war news. She starts coughing, and we get the first indication the atmosphere of the planet is starting to affect her. She asks for some good news and asks Sisko if he's married. Then they start talking about Kasidy, and she picks up immediately they're having problems, saying there's no joy in his voice.
That's terrible. And why does he always act like a fidgety child when he's supposed to portray uncertainty or strife with his girlfriend? It's very weird.
She then starts telling Sisko a story about how she dated a civilian for 6 years when she was a junior officer. Sisko was about to say something, but she just launches straight into the story. And he smiles and then actually settles down to listen.
I would think all that talking, though, you're using up your oxygen. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know how triox works in that situation.
Yeah, because it's not like a room running out of oxygen. Yeah, I don't know.
Back to Quark's, and Odo is showing Quark a necklace that's a gift for Kira. Quark then offers Odo a holosuite program to make the right setting for the anniversary date. Quark is very pleased with himself and telling Jake that Odo will be out of the way Saturday night. He won't be monitoring his activities, and the biggest problem he'll have is what to do with all the money he's going to make.
Jeez.
I'm pretty sure Odo is well aware of what Quark is up to.
Yeah.
Once again, we see that Ferengi...
Overconfidence.
Yeah. They are the ultimate at counting their chickens before they've hatched.
Yeah. And Quark says something here like, oh, if it were me and I'd found true love, I'd spend every month celebrating. Let me call BS on that based on Quark's own history. I mean, that alone probably got Odo suspicious.
Oh, yeah. Quark is nowhere near subtle enough when he's trying to point someone in the direction he wants. Odo would pick that up immediately. I'm with you. Back to the Defiant, and Lisa is now talking to Julian. He's working on something at the same time, and he's not really paying attention to the conversation. Just saying, oh yeah, and uh-huh. And then Lisa says there's something moving outside. It's getting closer. Julian then starts paying attention as she shouts, no! And the comms go silent, and into a very dramatic ad break. Julian calls out for Captain Cusak, and she then puts on a fake voice saying, she's gone, I've eaten her. You weren't even listening to her anyway. Which I thought was really funny.
That was funny.
Julian apologizes, saying he got carried away with his work, and she jokes that, how did they let you out of medical school with that bedside manner? She picks on Julian a little more, and he says, it's going to take me some hours to crawl out of this hole I dug for myself. And she replies, not at all. It's going to take days.
I like her. She seems fun.
She seems to have a very good sense of humor. Back to Quark, and he's setting up a nefarious deal with what looks like a Narsicon, saying they'll meet in a cargo bay in 5 days' time. Jake's watching all of this, and Odo comes back in with the holo program he wants. And you've noted this in the past, that Quark just seems to do these deals out in the open.
Yeah, that's in my notes. I was just about to say that. He's doing it right in the bar.
Yeah.
And he's just sort of talking quietly. Remember, all the Ferengi have super hearing, and you don't know where Odo is. He could be a glass right next to you.
Right.
Yeah.
He could be one of the bar stools. One of the new bar stools.
Yeah, it seems completely ridiculous. I mean, and on top of it, this plan is ridiculously high risk.
Right.
There's no space for anything to go wrong. Oh, it's silly.
It's a Ferengi plan, basically.
Yes.
Well, unfortunately for Quark and his master plan, Odo wants to book the holosuite for Sunday night, not Saturday. Quark reminds him that the first date was Saturday, and Odo tells him the first date ended badly. It's not something he wants to commemorate.
Oh.
That made me laugh too. As soon as Odo leaves, Quark tries to get the guy he was talking to back on comms, but as he's a wanted man, he's already changed his comms protocol. Quark can't change the rendezvous date, and he tells Jake if he sets foot on the station with Odo on duty, they'll both end up in a holding cell. Jake asks, what are you going to do? And Quark replies, I think my best option is to panic.
Yeah.
Oh, Quark, quite the criminal mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have a theory here.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, we already have learned he is wanted. So maybe there's a reward or even a bounty on his head. Make up some story, tell Odo where he knows this guy is going to be, and then when Odo busts him, collect the reward.
Yeah.
It'll also fulfill Ferengi Rule 76, which is once in a while, declare peace. It'll confuse the hell out of your enemies. Plus, don't forget, a deal's a deal, only if it's with another Ferengi.
Yeah, I mean, that is certainly an option, though it's high risk to start turning in criminals if you want to keep doing business with them, with other criminals.
Oh, I'm sure Quark could figure out. Actually, I would say I'm sure Quark could figure out a way around it. But yeah, we've seen Quark's plans here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he probably, yeah.
Yeah, probably not.
On the Defiant, Mars is talking to Lisa, and he's telling her about how the war is affecting him, and how he's experiencing a growing sense of isolation. She's giving him good advice, and Mars jokes, are you sure you're a captain, not a counselor? Mars and Lisa then talk about how they dislike the idea of a ship's counselor, and he says he prefers to talk to friends. So she asks him, where are your friends? And Mars replies, well, this is not the kind of thing we talk about.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was quite alarming. It's like, yeah, I don't need to talk to a counselor. I have friends. Oh, but I don't talk to my friends about this. Okay.
Lisa then tells him, if you can't talk to your friends and you can't talk to your wife, you know who that leaves. And then at the same time, they both say, a ship's counselor, and then laugh.
Do you think that Lisa, as an experienced captain, was actually leading him that way? Or did she really think she didn't like counselors?
No, I think she was showing solid leadership here.
Yeah.
She realized that Miles had this resistance to the counseling and was leading him to a conclusion, which was, okay, yeah, maybe a counselor is a good idea. I thought that was a very smart move.
And a few of the things he said were pretty alarming.
Yes.
Certainly this thing about this isn't the kind of thing you talk about, but he also said he had this growing sense of isolation.
Yes.
Yeah, that is definitely alarming. And if somebody said that to me, whether I was their friend, colleague, manager, whatever, I would certainly try to do something about it.
Right. And also, don't necessarily like the portrayal of Miles here with, is this going to that, oh, he's a tough working man, he doesn't need any of this psychological help. When Miles has been kidnapped and tortured and put on trial for his life, spent a lifetime effectively in a jail on an alien world. Miles has had counseling in the past to get through these kind of problems. I wouldn't think you would dismiss it. I felt that was playing too much on that Miles, oh, I don't need any of these fancy things trope, which I think is unfair for the character.
Well, I do think you're quite sensitive about things like that in Miles's portrayal. However, just because you've had therapy before doesn't mean that you necessarily jump to it immediately. You still are maybe the kind of person who thinks you can sort out all of your own issues. And sometimes, until you say it out loud, you don't even realize that you have really pulled back from something. So to me, in this moment, for the first time, he's maybe realizing this. Wow, I have pulled away from my friends. Oh, gee, and I don't even talk to them about these really troubling things when I do talk to them. And just like you said, Miles has been going through a lot. Not just the war. He has been going through a lot. And so for him to almost have this anonymous encounter with this person, just this disembodied voice, is giving him the freedom to just say whatever's on his mind.
So it's putting words into feelings that he's not actually expressing.
Right. Yeah, that's what I think.
That's a great take.
That's the way I watched it.
Okay, that's different. Yeah. Maybe I'm a little sensitive to Miles's portrayal, but
you are.
That's a good way of looking at it.
But it's okay.
Julian now calls Miles, informing him that it's 1800 hours and it's his turn to talk to Lisa. And she makes a joke about, don't fight over me, boys. She now tells Julian that the last injection didn't work and she's starting to have trouble breathing and her coughing has got noticeably worse.
Ugh, I don't like to hear anybody talking about having trouble breathing. Having been through it, I feel it is painful.
Bashir informs Sisko that she's run out of triox and at most only has 2 more days, but they're still 3 days away. The crew is discussing how to get more speed out of the ship. Miles can make the Defiant go faster, but the ship starts tearing itself apart above Warp 9. I so love the Defiant. Put it in a second warp core. Make that thing go even faster. During the next refit, dual warp cores.
Yeah, make it a little tougher so it doesn't fly itself apart.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the only way to get more power is to drain the phaser resources and warp objects. But Sisko orders O'Brien to use the reserves and get all the speed they can.
Yeah, and Worf protests that they might put themselves at risk.
Yes.
If they ran into Dominion ships or something. But Worf would tear the ship apart for his own wife. He would do anything. So I don't know.
Well, I would see Worf looking at it as that's actually part of his job.
Yes, it is.
He's the tactical officer. He should inform the captain of the consequences of this action. Even if the captain says, we're doing this anyway, which is pretty much what happened.
Maybe my real point here is that, is this really that different from what Worf did?
True.
Put a mission at risk to save one person, one Starfleet officer.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that it was his wife, which everybody focused on. But if it wasn't his wife and it was a random Starfleet captain, is that different?
Interesting.
It's similar at the very least.
I would say similar.
Yeah, I'm just saying I feel like Sisko is doing the same thing that Worf did. They're not taking away his captaincy.
That's kind of a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Sisko will get chewed out afterwards. Kasidy then comes to the bridge asking if she can help. But Sisko is being so weirdly standoffish.
He's being petulant, and it's really pissing me off.
Almost to the point of being rude, I would say.
He's very rude, and it's Look, it's not just that he's being rude to his girlfriend. He's being rude to a civilian in a position of leadership in front of a bunch of other people. You cannot do that. That's bad leadership.
Oh.
If instead you just want to say, hey, don't be on the bridge during this mission, you can do that. You can remain official. But he was just acting like a child.
Sisko is now talking to Lisa again, and she sounds really rough. He tells her of the events that just happened and how he really wanted Kasidy to leave the bridge. Lisa tells him how he doesn't want Kasidy in that part of his life, and he knows it. On the Defiant, she's a random element, and she tells him, this isn't a problem with Kasidy, it's a problem with Sisko. He has trouble doing his job when she's there, and worse, it's affecting his relationship.
What a simple conversation to have. To say, I'm the boss, I'm the commander, and when you're there, I struggle with that because I don't want to treat you that way. So, boy, if you could just stay off the bridge, it would be great.
Okay, I'm jumping into overanalysis. I feel, of all people, Sisko would be the one to have the difficult conversation with Kasidy about the separation of his personal life and him as the captain, because there's a good reason for it. His wife was on a ship that got destroyed.
Totally.
There's going to be a huge resistance to having Kasidy involved in that part of his life because it got his wife killed.
And she's smart enough to know that too. It's not all on him. She should know that as well because, again, adults, they should be able to talk about it.
I get what they're going for, but I think they should have played it much more to the loss aspect of, I don't want to have somebody I care about during a war in my work environment that could get her killed.
Yep. Lisa should have told him to stop being a petulant child.
She might not have known that part.
No, she didn't know. She didn't see it.
Well, Lisa goes on to tell him he can't mix his personal and professional life, and goes on to tell him an anecdote about how she couldn't either when she served with her sister.
That was funny.
All the while, she's coughing. He tells her that he's looking forward to meeting her, and that he's not the only one around here who feels that way. And she tells him, I think everyone on that ship needs some R&R.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Back to the station, and Quark is showing Jake some crystals in a cargo bay. He's going to get 200 bars for these. He then goes on to this kind of rant about how Odo only found true love because of him. And Quark continues to be whiny and acting like he's owed something. He's almost like taking credit for Odo and Kira getting together when it was actually Julian's holo program that actually deserves more of the credit.
Yeah, I think that's what I put in my notes. It's like, why does he think he gets all the credit?
It's that Ferengi sense of entitlement coming up again.
I guess.
Remember in the episode where Morn pretended he was dead?
Yeah.
And you said, why does Quark believe he deserves the money?
Yeah. He said, I deserve the money. It's
yeah.
Like, do you?
We also get Rule of Acquisition 285. No good deed ever goes unpunished.
Yeah.
Well, after they leave the cargo bay, a stack of barrels turns into Odo. So he knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah. He's no dummy.
Back to the bar, and wallowing in misery, Quark is toasting to failure with Jake. Odo now walks in, dressed in a tux, and asks Quark for the holo program, telling him that Kira wants to celebrate the first date today. And here they are. As Kira and Odo head to the holosuite, Quark tells Jake, I'm going to win this one. I did it. I beat him. Kira tells Odo he looks happy, and Odo tells her he should be. He's about to make the biggest profit of the year. And on the second level, Kira and Odo look down at Quark and she says, are you sure you want to let him get away with smuggling Denvian crystals? Odo tells her, I owe him one, but just this one.
I guess if nobody's going to get hurt, he can make that decision.
Kira tells Odo, why is it every time I think I have you figured out, you do something to surprise me?
This was a great scene. I really liked it.
It was.
Yeah. Because they sort of make you think maybe Kira doesn't know what's going on, but I love the fact that they talked about it and she knew. It was great.
Yeah, this is almost the opposite of Sisko and Kasidy here. Of these two have obviously communicated.
Mm-hmm.
The Defiant has now finally made it to the planet, and they're passively scanning the surface because of what happened to the Olympia. Bashir tells Sisko that Captain Cusak has lost consciousness, and they've only got 45 minutes to get her to sickbay. They can't take the ship any closer or use transport, so they have to use one of the Defiant's shuttles. It's risky, but Sisko tells them he didn't come all this way to give up, so he takes a shuttle along with Julian and Miles. It's a rough ride down, and they make it through the energy field. Julian finds the crash site and the cave, but they're really tight for time. Only 20 minutes left. The planet looks pretty hostile and it's raining heavily. They're searching the caves, but not getting any life signs. Finally, Julian calls, "Over here," and we see a body, but it's a very old body. Julian confirms, human female, cause of death, CO2 poisoning. Sisko says, "It can't be Lisa. That woman has been dead for years." And Bashir says, 3 years and 2 months, but all the other evidence fits. Sisko asks, how can she have been talking to us? And Miles figures out it was the energy barrier. The Metreon radiation was somehow time-shifting the subspace radio signal into the future for her and into the past for them.
That was a real shock to me. I mean, I knew from the beginning that she wasn't going to be alive when they got there, but I really liked that little twist.
Yeah, I think all the lead up to it and the fact there was this time crunch, I was like, oh, they're going to do the thing where they get there and it's just minutes too late. But this, totally unexpected.
They weren't even rushing at the end. Every time they showed the Defiant, it looked like it was going slow. And then when they got there, they weren't running. I mean, that would have been annoying if they had just missed it by a minute. But yeah, that was a good twist.
Julian asks what they should do now. And Miles says, they should bury her. Sisko calmly replies, no, not here. Not alone in this cave. We'll take her back with us. Give her a proper burial amongst friends. This totally got me. 24 years ago, it got me too, and it still does today. I think it was the way Avery just delivered those lines. It really gave you a sense that this person, just for this short period of time, had made a difference to Sisko.
Yeah, it was a powerful moment.
We cut to an outside shot of the station showing a now docked Defiant. In the wardroom, we see a coffin, draped with the flag of the Federation, which might also be a photon torpedo case, and Dax explaining to Worf how they're holding an Irish wake, celebrating the life of the deceased. Worf wonderfully replies, it sounds almost Klingon. Kasidy is looking out of the window, and Sisko tells her that after this is over, they need to talk. He wants to try and explain about his behavior lately. She tells him that sounds good, but it'll be over dinner, and he'll have to cook. They smile at each other, and you get a sense that things are going to get better. Julian now starts giving a speech about Lisa Cusak, saying he admired her, he cared about her, and he's going to miss her. He goes on to say how he really does care about his friends, even if sometimes he appears to care more about his work. He then toasts Lisa, saying, to the woman who taught me, it's sometimes necessary to say these things. Miles starts telling his story of how she made him laugh and she made him weep. He tells her how the war has pulled them all apart, but Lisa was his friend, and he wants his friends in his life. He finally toasts to Lisa and the sweet sound of her voice. The end. Wow.
It was an emotional ending, yeah.
I did not see this episode having the emotional impact it did.
Yeah, I can understand that. That last scene was quite emotional. I mean, it got to you a little bit sooner, but I liked how we saw in that scene what she did for them in such a short time.
Yes.
You know, Julian had to face his sort of lack of empathy, and Miles had to face his withdrawal from his emotions as he's been protecting himself from harm.
Sisko with his lack of communication.
Right. And these are things that a leader can show too. You know, it doesn't take a counselor to bring all of this out.
Oh, are we having an early leadership corner?
Well, someone writing this show, I don't think, believes in therapy, but anyway. She basically helped them see that they were all losing their humanity.
Yeah.
So it was good. I do have a little bit in Leadership Corner later, although we've kind of already talked about it. But do you have overanalysis?
Yes, I think we do. So Odo knew exactly what Quark was up to the entire time. And he was going to let Quark get away with this thing. I mean, he knew he was smuggling crystals. So like you said, probably no one was getting hurt and it was just contraband of some time. And he obviously was enjoying torturing Quark. Plus, I was thinking, he could always get this guy after the deal closes. Like when the guy leaves the station, one of the deputies just happens to be waiting. Or when he tries to leave the Bajoran system, there's a patrol that just happens to catch him or something. It would keep Quark out of the mix, but it would still mean Quark got his money.
No, it's a good point. There were other things he could have done. And maybe he did do those other things.
That's what I was thinking. Next thing, going back to your point earlier, I felt this episode missed one thing. I would really have liked to have seen Kasidy and Worf talking to Lisa.
Yeah, Kasidy for sure.
Right.
I agree.
Because I think it would be interesting to get Kasidy's perspective on what she's feeling about this.
Yeah.
Because if she's doing convoy runs, she is also in danger.
Right.
So even if Sisko is like, I don't want her in this part of my life, She's running convoys that could be attacked and destroyed by the Jem'Hadar or the Cardassians. She's in this part of your life. You can't avoid it.
Yeah, if he doesn't want her involved, I'm sure he had the ability to not allow her on the ship. And he could have said it like a mature adult, which is just, I find it difficult to work with you around or whatever, and I would prefer you did this on a different ship. At the same time, maybe he wanted her on his ship and not on some other ship because of the things you were mentioning earlier about how he might have in the back of his mind about how he lost his first wife. So he might have conflicting feelings about trying to protect her, but also keeping her out of his work life.
That's something that would be a really good idea to talk about. Maybe discuss.
Yeah.
Maybe they were missing that all of them have been under long-term stress.
Yeah.
That really, a big part of this is the fact that fatigue at fighting constantly is getting to them. Maybe that was sort of the part that was missed in this story.
Well, I think to some degree they covered it with Miles.
Yeah.
And she said something like your whole crew needs a vacation, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So I think they were trying to get there, but maybe what's bothering us, or maybe just me, I don't want to speak for you, is the fact that Sisko's problem didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like it was related to the stress of war.
Right.
It felt like, yet again, his girlfriend was annoying him, which this isn't the first time it's happened, and he didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So if we were to look at it like it was really just the stress of war mixed in with his concern for her well-being because of his own history.
Right.
But I don't think they did a good job of making me understand that that's what was actually happening in the story.
Right. It needed to be expanded that everyone was suffering from battle fatigue, if you like. And Sisko, on top of that, also had the problem of his girlfriend being.
Gosh, it would have been so easy to explain that in the story. Sisko just needed a line or two.
Yes. Especially talking to Lisa.
To really clarify that. Yeah, when he was talking to her. Did you keep thinking worlds are colliding? Wasn't that the line from Seinfeld?
Oh, man.
That's what, I don't know. That kept going through my mind. It can be hard. I mean, you and I worked together for a long time, and
yes,
it can be stressful because every minute can't be about the two of you. You're working. That, I think we both understood that, and that can definitely be hard. But also, they're not 20-year-olds, so they could have a conversation about it, and they should be able to. You know what might help? Having a counselor. But anyway.
Well, they have the invisible one on the station. We've talked about that before. Next thing. So, I wonder how many lost Starfleet ships there are out there. Couldn't they keep some kind of registry?
Oh my God, that's 2 just in the last few weeks, yeah.
I'm thinking maybe you could keep some kind of registry of the ships that you have, and you could keep them in a database and look them up when somebody says, oh, I'm the captain of the Olympia. And you could go, oh, it was lost 3 years ago.
Seems like maybe they could have looked it up. They're not great at looking stuff up.
Yeah.
Like even when Sloan was on the station a couple of episodes ago, they didn't inquire into whether or not he was real. And it happened before where they had, I can't remember, was it an admiral? It actually turned out to be a changeling.
Oh, the ambassador, yes.
Oh yeah, he was an ambassador, not an admiral. But do we ever look into anything? Nah. He said he was this. I'm sure it's fine.
Is this where sci-fi is suffering from the pre-internet world, where you can't look every single thing up?
Yeah. I mean, I do think so, because we have all information about everything at our fingertips all the time. The challenge, of course, that we have is it's usually inaccurate. So I guess that would confuse it. But, I mean, we've talked about how they missed the advent of everybody having a camera or a video camera right in their hands, right?
Yes.
So, sure, we do have to accept that it was the 90s.
And my final point.
Yeah.
Now, I think this is something that could be really put to use. If they're transmitting to this planet and it's sending signals into the past, I'm wondering if they could rig up some kind of relay so that they broadcast to the planet, 3 years in the past, that relays it out into the current timeline so they could actually send messages saying, watch out for the Dominion, watch out for the wormhole, and this is what you're going to have to do to win the Dominion War. Yeah,
we never use these time things to our advantage.
Yeah.
Even the Orb of Time. We could have used that to save many things, apparently.
Right.
Because it wasn't just a dream.
Yeah, they just use them to get rid of unwanted kids and to see what your parents were up to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're missing an opportunity.
At least they could, again, just even a line to discuss it. Like, could we use this to warn ourselves about blah, blah, blah? No, we don't even talk about it. We have 46 minutes. We got to keep it moving. We have to spend some time on Odo and Quark doing nothing.
We could headcanon out of it saying, look, these are all Starfleet officers. They're going to follow the Temporal Prime Directive.
They never, but there's so many cases where they don't.
Oh, well, those are important
It's
cases.
just when it's convenient to the story.
Yes, very true. And that wraps it up for me. Over to you.
Okay, I have just a couple of things, not so much overanalysis. Well, but I guess let's see what happens. So my first point is, I'm not really sure what to think about the Odo story.
Yeah.
Was it really earned that he would just think that he does owe Quark something?
Kind of does.
You think he does?
Yes. I was thinking about this some more, and he does tell Odo at some point, he's had months since she broke up with Shakar. Isn't it time he made some kind of move? Isn't it time he did something?
I agree he has said stuff and pushed him. I just don't know that Odo actually listened to him.
That's the question.
Yeah.
And then the other side is, Quark was probably the linchpin of stopping the Dominion on the station when he freed Kira and the others. So he, to a large extent, saved Kira's life.
Well, true, but they already paid him back for that favor, if you recall. That's how they got his mother back, although he might actually think that's more of a curse than a favor.
Well, that was Starfleet specifically. So maybe Odo...
Well, it was Kira, remember?
That's true.
Yeah. But okay, I take your point. He saved his girlfriend's life and helped maybe in that moment too, because remember, Odo was stuck in the cult.
Yes, exactly.
And maybe saving his girlfriend, because he wasn't doing it himself, and Quark did save her. Okay, I'll give you that one.
Thank you.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but I'll give it to you. My next point is, and now after listening in on the conversation between Jake and Quark, Odo has got to look at Jake as an accessory and be suspicious of him.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Because he's not a teenager or he's not a kid anymore. He's an adult. So he can't just go, oh, no big deal. He just was part of this.
He was part of a criminal conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. He kind of was.
It made his writing more authentic.
Yeah, so he said. It made it more Ferengi. I would question whether or not that was truly authentic.
So his nefarious characters in his book would come up with really bad plans.
Really terrible plans, yeah. Yeah, he really should have just spent some time with Miles and learned about his time on the Mob planet.
Planet of the Mob.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised this guy, if he was a wanted man, hadn't got caught yet. If he doesn't have some kind of protocol set up of, if he's going to a meeting, 15 minutes beforehand, he calls Quark and said, everything good? Not just arrange it and assume everything would be fine when you got there?
Or again, have a signal, right?
Yes.
How many times have we talked about that? Just some kind of a signal that, yes, it's all clear.
Just very simple.
Or no, get the heck out of here.
Pre-internet days.
It's like, what was it? 1 if by land, 2 if by sea, something like that. Put 2 lights in your window if I shouldn't come. I mean, how hard would that be? We've already established you can see in the windows.
Yes.
From the outside.
Yeah, nobody has any curtains.
No. Changing topics. I was wondering when they were talking to Captain Lisa, whose last name I don't remember. Cusak? Did nobody really ever say a star date? Did she really never ask a star date when they said we'll be there in 2 days? I mean, how can she tell the days? Because she's on a different planet. She's not on Bajor, so she doesn't have the exact time. I mean, that's the point of the star dates, right? Is to avoid the confusion of the different times and dates on different planets.
Yeah.
I thought.
So ask her what the star date is.
I would think she would ask, like, I don't know how long I've been here, something like that. But never came up.
Yes. If she just made the assumption that her local time on her tricorder or whatever was correct, it might not have come up.
Well, it didn't. But yeah.
It's not unreasonable to assume they didn't talk about dates.
It's not unreasonable. I agree. It just seems like it could have come up.
Well, that would have ruined the story.
Yeah, it would have. And then my last point is, again, not so much an overanalysis, but there's a part where Quark and Jake are talking. It's way at the beginning when Jake says Kira and Odo are in love. And Quark is like, what's love? Love is a distraction. love is a distraction. I think that's totally true. I mean, Jake was trying to argue with him, but love is definitely a distraction, but it's also life. So Quark just has such a confusing view of everything. And I think a lot of it is wrapped around his inability to have relationships, and I don't just mean with women, his relationships with people that he can believe in, be a part of. He's evolved over time.
Yeah.
Like his relationship with Odo has evolved, but yet they took it all the way back to season 1 in this episode, which is a little confusing.
Yeah.
But I just think this is an example of Quark not understanding life.
Oh.
He's so focused on money, which is the Ferengi problem, I guess.
Yes, and that's very much Quark's problem. His love of profit has excluded everything else in his life. He's very shallow. I think it's generally a Ferengi problem. Yeah. Very few of them actually expand their horizons. This is where Nog and Rom are the exception.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, that wasn't so much an overanalysis as an observation.
It's remained pretty consistent throughout. I mean, Quark's own personal happiness comes second to his sense of societal norms and the pursuit of profit.
Right.
They have remained consistent with that. It is pretty good writing.
I question that the Ferengi are good writing at all, but you know how I feel about them.
Yes.
Okay, should I go to Leadership Corner or Women in the Future next?
I have to hear your Leadership Corner. That's why I come to the podcast.
Oh, well, it's not completely black and white when you are finding yourself dealing with the emotional well-being of your team. You can't be a therapist, and certainly your HR department would tell you you can't be a therapist. That's a burden that can really impact your ability to lead.
Yeah.
But you have to be compassionate because they're just people with lives and problems. But if you get too deep into something and you try to fix something that is really difficult, like what Miles was talking about, you can get in over your head and actually do harm. So don't kid yourself that you think you're a therapist. You're the manager or the captain or the leader or whatever. Don't do harm is the point. And the thing that sometimes gets lost when people are thinking, hey, I can counsel my people through this, is you have a larger team to protect. And you're not trained for what you're trying to do here with that one individual. You need someone who can really focus on that one person, focus on their issues. And they're not as concerned, or don't have to be because it's not their job, to protect the other people around them. And by protect, I don't mean from a dangerous person. That's not what I mean. I mean, you have an entire team that you're trying to keep motivated, employed, part of this group, whatever it is. Obviously, I'm talking about employment. But if you've got one person that you are over-focusing on to the detriment of the rest of your team, you're not a good leader.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't just ignore the emotional well-being of one individual. This is where you make use of outside counselors. It can be very confusing to talk about this, and I've talked to many managers about this to try to help them see you will be more successful if you lead the people under you as people first. You worry about the people part of it first. You will have more success.
Yeah.
But if you get too buried into their day-to-day emotional well-being, you get sucked into that. You're forgetting about the other people. It can be very, very tricky. So I was concerned when I first watched the scene between Miles and Captain Lisa that she was really leading him down a bad path of saying, you don't need a counselor. All you need are friends. All you need are the people around you, blah, blah, blah. But then at the end, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Did she do that on purpose? Which is why I asked you that question. Because I wasn't sure.
I saw it as on purpose. It was her intention.
Then I think she was exhibiting some good leadership. I'm not as convinced with what she said to Sisko. I guess because, to the point you made, she wasn't really aware of what he was doing and how he was treating her, Kasidy, in front of the crew. Because again, you have the larger team to protect. That's the thing that always gets lost when you get hyper-focused on one thing. You got to protect everything else.
I'm wondering in that case whether we should look at it as maybe Lisa Cusak actually had qualifications and experience in counseling. Maybe she was one of the rare captains who actually came from a social sciences background.
Well, you don't have to have formal training to be able to listen to people and to be able to identify when they need more help than you can give them.
Oh, I'm saying perhaps this is...
I know, but I'm just saying maybe she didn't, because I think it would be pretty tough to get to the captain level with those qualifications. I don't know. But I guess you could take the training and then switch. So, yeah, we don't know. She's dead. She's been dead for 3 years.
Wow, that's brutal. That's harsh.
We didn't get her bio. And I already talked about what I thought about the way Sisko was behaving, so I think I'll move on to women in the future. I have one sentence in my notes in Women in the Future, and It says, I don't like adding a female character just for the privilege of being a punching bag. And it's different from when we added the one female character in the Miles is a Mobster episode, which was terrible. She didn't have a line.
But that's a Hollywood tradition.
Yeah. This is different in that she had many lines, but we never got to see her. She didn't have a face, and she was dead at the end. That's what I mean about her being a punching bag, is that she wasn't really an ongoing character, and she didn't even have the privilege of being seen. So I don't know. It could have been any gender in that role. But it's a quibble. It's nothing. But that was the only point that I had in Women in the Future. I didn't really take any other note of anything. All right, let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. Loved this episode. It's one of those episodes that I enjoyed it, and I found the ending surprisingly moving.
Yeah, this is a good episode of Star Trek. It has its flaws, but it's solid. I give it a thumbs up.
Yes.
Had a surprise at the end. Yeah, why not? Maybe the surprising thing is, my favorite thing in this episode is that moment way at the beginning when Odo is like under the Dabo table telling Quark what's wrong with his Dabo table.
Yes.
And then Kira walks in and just says, Odo. And his whole body turns to her. His face lights up. He completely forgets what he was doing before, and he just goes, Nerys. And he just goes right to her, and she says, oh, would you like to have lunch? And he's like, absolutely. And they just leave.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a relatable moment to me, even though maybe to other people it's not relatable, but I could see that like between you and me, where we're maybe stuck in something, and then here I come into the room, you're stuck working on something. I could absolutely see you go, oh, Kim, yes, let's go to lunch. And just completely forgetting what you were doing before. So I just found that very sweet, and I found that very relatable, and that was my favorite part of the episode.
Oh, that's funny. It's almost the inverse of what I most enjoyed, was just after everything, and where Bashir asks, what do we do? And Sisko says, we need to bury her amongst friends.
Yeah.
It just sort of showed this odd connection that she'd made with all of them.
Yeah. Well, they wanted to be her heroes, but they didn't get the chance. And I think by then I was very resigned to her being dead.
Yeah.
I feel like I knew it from the beginning. I mean, I didn't have any spoilers of this episode, but I felt like it was inevitable in the story that she wasn't going to survive. So I had maybe already sort of given up. It was definitely emotional. Not that same moment that you found emotional, but I found the wake very emotional just because of the impact she had on the crew and the fact that she was managing to draw humanity out of them. And I thought that was very well done.
Agreed.
So it's so funny to go from last week's episode of Time's Orphan, where one of our major criticisms of that was it should have been sad, and it was not.
It was emotionless.
It was emotionless. The characters didn't have any emotion, which meant we didn't have any emotion.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I've ever cried as much at a show as I have at this show. Maybe because we're watching it one week after another, and there hasn't been a break since we started at the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, we've taken a week or two here or there, but this has pretty much been a constant thing where we're watching every week. So it's leading me through the emotions more frequently.
Yeah.
But that episode was such a dud.
And then we get
this
episode.
They could have just skipped it. And then we get this episode, which was emotional, at least in parts, for each of us.
I mean, yeah, like I said, 24 years after it was originally aired, it still gets me. That's impressive.
Yeah. Okay, I think that wraps up Season 6, Episode 25. Come back next week for Episode 26 and the season finale of Season 6.
Yes.
Which is a shocker.
Oh, yes, it is quite the pivotal episode.
When we started on this journey at the beginning of the pandemic, literally, I think we started recording in March of 2020, because what else were you going to do in the pandemic in the beginning? This seemed so far away because I remember we kept adding up how many weeks it was going to take for us to get through this show. And holy cow, if we're not already at the end of season 6, it's crazy.
Yeah. Rebinge Voyager gets closer week by week.
Especially now that we recognize what a love letter to Voyager Prodigy is. That has really helped fuel the fire for wanting to watch some Voyager.
Oh, completely.
Okay, well, while you're waiting for us to do season 6, episode 26, in the meantime, you can send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIT@gmail.com. We were getting all kinds of email there for a while, but it's gone quiet lately. Maybe as we've gone through some of these clunky episodes. We got a lot of emails about statistical probabilities, and then it's mostly been quiet ever since then. Anyway, if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIT@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at ReBingeIt. We're also on Instagram and YouTube at ReBingeIt. You can check us out on TalkThroughMedia.com. You can leave feedback there for individual episodes, and you can also listen to other podcasts in our network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.